can't believe I'm here, playing for my life tonight.
I can't believe I'm here, I made it, I'm playing for my life tonight. I'm a shining light. I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm here, playing for our life tonight. Yeah, I'm playing for our life tonight.
Welcome, friends, to another episode of Kingdom Driven Sports. In this video, I'll be making my Week 7 NFL picks. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your support. I hope that you'll like this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I hope that you'll do that as well. Let's get into these picks. We're going to start with the Thursday night game between the Steelers and the Bengals. The Steelers are 5.5-point favorites against the Bengals. I'm going to roll with the Steelers. They for sure are at the top of the AFC North right now. The Bengals, without Joe Burrow, just have been struggling. I do think they keep it closer than what people think, especially now that they have some veteran leadership with Joe Flacco there, and now that he has another week to learn the offense. But I still think that Pittsburgh ends up winning this game 24-21. So Pittsburgh wins the game outright, but they don't cover the spread. Because it's also a division game, but also because of the veteran leadership of Joe Flacco. I think he'll help keep it close. And he still has weapons like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Chase Brown in the backfield. I think they'll be able to compete in this one, but I still believe Pittsburgh will come out on top, 24-21. Next, we have the Rams versus the Jaguars. This is the London game that will be taking place early morning on Sunday. I believe it's around 9:25. The Rams are favored by 2.5. I'm actually going to have an upset on this one, especially with Puka Nacua not being 100%. I think he's still supposed to play, but I very much doubt that he will be 100% for this game. So I'm rolling with the Jacksonville Jaguars to have a bounce back game to win this game 28-24. I just think that they'll bounce back from their loss last week where they didn't look the greatest. They'll try to right the ship and take advantage of the Rams, their best weapon being not at 100%. I have Jacksonville winning 28-24 in the London game this Sunday. We then move to the 1 p.m. slot. We'll start with the Saints versus the Bears. The Bears are 4.5-point favorites, coming off that Monday night thrilling win against the Commanders, and with the Saints just having a down year, and it's looking like they're going to be in this rebuilding mode definitely this year, and I think Chicago is able to take advantage of that, especially since Chicago has seemed to look better and better with each passing week. And I think the Bears more than covered the spread. Right now they're favored by 4.5 points. And I think Chicago ends up winning 28-17 over the New Orleans Saints. The next game listed at that 1 o'clock slot is the Raiders versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 12.5-point favorites. Las Vegas has been one of those teams that have been pretty disappointing. I didn't think they would win the AFC West, but I thought they would definitely do better than what they are doing now. They have some offensive line woes, and their offense has been struggling, and their defense has been trying to hold the fort down. If your offense can't sustain drives and your defense is out on the field for quite a while, then come the late third quarter, fourth quarter, they're going to be tired. It doesn't matter how good your defense is or what type of players you have. I think Max Crosby on the Raiders is one of the best pass rushers in the game, but if he's going to be out on the field the majority of the snaps because your offense can't sustain drives, then he's going to get tired. I think the Chiefs cover that 12.5-point spread. I know it's a pretty big spread, but just the way Las Vegas has looked these past few weeks, it doesn't seem they're clicking at all. And Kansas City, on the other hand, looks like they're just starting to get into their groove. Their offense has been lighting it up. It's shown flashes of what it looked like back when Tyreek Hill was on the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs put up a lot of points again in this game, 31-16. And they come away with a victory and get above 500 for the first time this year. Chiefs over the Raiders 31-16, covering that 12.5-point spread. The next game in the 1 p.m. slot is the Dolphins versus the Browns. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites. This might be a pretty ugly game. The Dolphins, their entire organization seems to be in disarray. If you followed them and what happened this past week with Tua's remarks, just didn't look good. Definitely should have kept that in the locker room and between him and his teammates. I don't think that was the best choice by him. I think there's definitely some major issues within their organization. I would be surprised if by the end of the season, on that Black Monday where coaches get fired, if Mike McDaniel isn't one of those coaches. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens earlier than that. But because the Dolphins are just, you talk about a team that was in the playoffs a couple years ago, and now they are towards the bottom of the league. They have digressed greatly. So I think they're going to be in full rebuild mode come this offseason. And because of their disarray, I think the Browns are able to take advantage of that. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites in this game, and I know the Browns aren't much better. That whole Deshaun Watson debacle, them having to watch Baker Mayfield potentially have an MVP season with Tampa Bay. That organization has just seemingly made poor choice after poor choice. I'm hoping that Dylan Gabriel, or if the time comes and they decide to play Shedeur Sanders, I'm hoping that one of them can have success. The Cleveland Browns, their poor fan bases have been starved for a championship. They haven't even sniffed the Super Bowl. Hopefully, one of these two young quarterbacks can give that fan base some hope. My dad is part of that fan base. He's been a Browns fan for years. He tells me about the days of Bernie Kosar, Ernest Biner, and Eric Metcalf, and just a bunch of players he remembers watching, and never have they been to the Super Bowl. Hopefully they can do something to turn it around. In this game, I have them winning 17-13. I think it'll be an ugly game. But Cleveland's defense is really good, and I think their defense will help them win this game. I'm hoping that Dylan Gabriel is able to have, I don't expect him to have stellar numbers that will just wow you, but I'm hoping he's able to do just enough to start that upward trend of impressing the coaches and showing that he deserves to be the starter there in Cleveland. But yes, Cleveland 17, Miami 13. That is my prediction. They cover that 2.5-point spread. This next game was a little bit tough to choose because it's the Eagles versus the Vikings. The Eagles are 1.5-point favorites. The Eagles have not looked like the Eagles that we've come to know over the past few years. They don't look anywhere near as polished as they did last year when they won the Super Bowl. Of course, I know it was around this same time last year, but everybody was starting to question the Eagles also, and then they, of course, turned it around and were able to make it to the Super Bowl and dominate. So I keep waiting for them to have that dominating performance. My only issue is that the Vikings have a really good defense. Brian Flores has them playing really well. And it's hard to win in Minnesota. They have as passionate a fan base as any team that you can imagine. And their defense ranks in the top 10. They're going to be able to do just enough to hand Philadelphia a third straight loss. I can't believe I'm saying that because we're talking about the defending Super Bowl champs. But because of the struggles they've had these past few weeks and the caliber of the defense they'll be facing, I think Minnesota is able to do just enough to help Carson Wentz get a victory over his old team. I think Minnesota wins this 27-21, and there will be many questions swirling around Philadelphia again. Although by the end of the year, I feel they will have righted the ship. They'll make the playoffs, and I think they'll be a force to be reckoned with. But right now, things are just not clicking the way they were last year. I think it'll take them working towards finding that groove again, that rhythm that they had to turn things around and hopefully make a push in the sense of getting victories and wins and not continuing this losing streak. My prediction is that, unfortunately for the Eagles, their losing streak continues this week, and there will be 3 in a row, only because the Vikings, their defense, has been playing so well, and the Eagles' offense has not. So again, Vikings 27, Eagles 21. That's my prediction for that game. We then have the Panthers, who are 1.5-point favorites over the Jets. And man, the Jets, -10 passing yards in their last game. That almost seems impossible. That is not a stat you want associated with your team, but that's what happened. Of course, they faced arguably the best defense in the NFL in the Broncos. Still, what a poor showing. Unfortunately, I don't think things get any better this week. Carolina has shown some fight and some signs of life, and I think they'll dominate this game 30-12. They definitely covered the spread, and I just think the Jets are not in a good place right now. I still believe in Aaron Glenn and think that he can get things turned around there, but because of the disarray, because of just so many question marks and the lack of offensive capability by this team, I just don't see them doing very well this year. They're the only winless team so far. They've shown flashes. If you remember, they played Tampa Bay pretty tough and almost came away with the victory there, but it's just been tough for them when you have a stat like that from last week where they had -10 passing yards. I don't think you just forget about that. I think it's going to be one of the toughest challenges for them, Justin Fields and that offense, to overcome that stat mentally to get ready for this game. -10 passing yards this past week, just an ugly showing, an ugly game, really, because the Broncos didn't do much better. Their defense is the reason they won that game, because their offense definitely struggled. But I have to take the Panthers in this one until the Jets can show me something different. At this point, I think they may have a fire sale and try to rebuild everything from scratch starting next year. Jets fans probably don't want to hear that, but given the poor performances they have had overall and their lack of ability to sustain drives, to keep up with other offenses, to do well, I don't see them competing this year at all. Right now, the season ends right now, they would have the #1 pick because they're the only winless team right now. So we'll see what happens with them as the year progresses. But this game against Carolina, I think they lose 30-12. And things just don't seem to get better. The last game for the 1 p.m. slot is the Patriots, who are 7.5-point favorites over the Titans. The Titans just fired Brian Callahan as their head coach. I don't think that's going to solve anything. I still think they're going to be a punching bag for any opponent they face because they are definitely in the rebuild mode. New England has shown that they are playing at a high level. In fact, they are right now sitting atop the AFC East. And who would have thought that, especially since the Bills were regarded by many to be the favorite to win the AFC, not just the AFC East, but to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Here they are, the Patriots, having beaten the Bills a couple of weeks ago, and then they were able to get a win this past week. I think they're looking a lot better than what people realize, and a credit to Mike for bringing in a winning culture. You saw him do the same thing with the Titans when he had Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback, and even one of those years had them as the #1 seed in the AFC. So I know he can get the job done in New England and already is doing so. I believe the Patriots will be a playoff team this year, and I think they're just going to win this game outright, more than the 7.5-point spread that they're favored by right now. I think they win this game 28-13, and Tennessee continues to try to search for answers and hope to rebuild around Cam Ward and their #1 pick, their quarterback. I think he'll be their franchise quarterback, but he's just going to need more weapons, and they're just going to need to address many issues before they can start competing. And so again, New England 28, Tennessee 13. We then move to the 4:05 p.m. slot. This next game is interesting to me because, especially after last game, I'm like, do I want to doubt the Giants again? Because they look good against the defending Super Bowl champs. They didn't just beat the Eagles, they smacked them around. Now they have a chance to do the same thing to the Broncos. They're going to Denver. Denver is a 7.5-point favorite. I was thinking about this one. It's one thing to beat the Eagles, who have kind of been reeling. Their defense is decent. You know, they're in top 10 in some areas, but they're not the Broncos defense. And that Broncos defense leads the league in sacks right now. 33, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I know for sure that they lead the league with sacks and being able to get to the quarterback. Now, that's where Jackson Dart and his legs are going to come in handy. I think this is going to be the hardest defense that Jackson Dart and Cam Scatabo face, especially because it's also in Denver. I know that high altitude can do things. I think the Broncos are able to come away with a win on this one. They don't quite cover the 7.5-point spread, but I do think they win 27-20. The Denver offense hasn't looked the greatest, and they've struggled. You just look at the last game they had against the Jets. They struggled to move the ball. The Giants have a really good defensive front themselves, but I think A, the home field advantage, and B, Denver's defense being elite, probably the number one defense overall. I think Denver for sure is the number one defense. I think they're going to cause enough havoc to a rookie quarterback, a rookie running back, and really make them sweat a little bit. But I also think that this new energy that the Giants have, because of Jackson Dart, because of Cam Scatabo, because of their defensive line being able to really penetrate and get to the quarterback, I think they at least keep it close. 27-20, I think Denver wins it by a touchdown, an extra point. But I just think their defense ends up being a little bit too much for Jackson Dart and Cam Scatabo to handle, especially since they are missing Malik Neighbors, their best wide receiver, and I believe Darius Slayton too. I just think it'll be too much to overcome, and I think Denver ends up getting the win. Again, 27-20. The next game in the 4:05 p.m. slot is the Colts versus Chargers. The Chargers are 1.5-point favorites, and I would have chosen them if they weren't hit severely, the Chargers, by the injury bug. They're missing both their running backs. They're missing two key offensive linemen, the right tackle and the left tackle. Justin Herbert has been the most pressured quarterback in the league. He's having to make plays on the move. Not that he can't do it, but it does make it more difficult, more challenging. And because they are that decimated on their offensive line with their running backs, I do think that the Colts end up winning this game. Even though the Chargers are 1.5-point favorites, the Colts have been one of the hottest and best looking teams. Daniel Jones has had a rebirth in Indianapolis and has been playing absolutely great football. And I think that continues. I think they're able to take advantage of a depleted Chargers team, and they win by 10, 27-17. And the Colts continue their winning ways. We'll see how long that continues. But I think because of the Chargers being so banged up, the Colts are able to take advantage of that and win this game outright, 27-17. We then move to the 4:25 p.m. slot. The first game is the Commanders, 1.5-point favorites over the Cowboys. This is another one where I have an upset. I have the Cowboys bouncing back from the embarrassing loss last week. I thought they should have won that game, but their defense is just not good. They are giving up points left and right, and it's hard to compete when your defense is playing that poorly. The Commanders have come off that heartbreaking loss where it looked like they were about to win the game, put the game away, and then they had that turnover. That a lot of it had to do with the mist that was going on during that time, and the ball just seemed to slip out of Jaden Daniels' hands as he was trying to hand it off to his running back, and it just slipped. They fumbled it, and then the Bears were able to recover it and go down the field to win the game. I do think that Dallas has a bounce back game on this. They're playing at home, and also because there's a possibility that CeeDee Lamb plays, that they have a good chance to outscore the Commanders. I don't think the defense is going to help them very much. But even if CeeDee Lamb doesn't come back, I have been super impressed with the way George Pickens has stepped up. And so I'm going to say that Dallas wins this game 33-30 in a shootout. They're able to bounce back. I do have some major concerns with that defense. If they're able to make the playoffs come playoff time, they won't be able to go deep because you do have to have a decent, at least decent defense, and they're far from that. But in this game, I have the Cowboys winning 33-30 over the Commanders. The next game we have is the Packers, 6.5-point favorites over the Cardinals. Man, that poor team, there's been a few games in a row where they've lost on last-second field goals or last-second plays, and it's just been tough for them. I don't think it changes this week. The Packers are just too good. Josh Jacobs is a monster in the backfield. Jordan Love is playing good football. And I think that they win, and they don't only win, but they cover the 6.5-point spread. I think Green Bay wins 27-18. But I think the Cardinals are struggling too much. And they have also been bitten by the injury bug. They lost James Conner, and I think that was a bigger loss than people realize because he's out for the year. There's just too much inconsistency with the Cardinals. So I think the Packers are able to win this game and do well. Green Bay 27, Arizona 18. We then have the Sunday Nighter. That's a game between the Falcons and the 49ers, which should be a really good game. The 49ers are actually favored by 2.5 points. I'm going with Atlanta on this one. They just lost the 49ers. They just lost Fred Warner to a season-ending injury. Devastating. I heard there's another one, that Tyreek Hill injury, where it's just gnarly. If you're squeamish, you probably shouldn't watch it. But Fred Warner, he's arguably the best linebacker in the game, and so now they've lost him for the year. They've had several injuries the past couple of years. The 49ers have just been decimated. I know Mac Jones has really stepped in and played well overall. I know he had a rough game last week, but they were playing the Buccaneers, who are arguably the number one team right now. I think the Falcons this past week pretty much dominated the Bills and made the Bills look very average. And you're talking about a team that was in the AFC Championship game last year. I think the Falcons are going to be a handful. And I think because of all the injuries that the 49ers have, because of Bijan Robinson being arguably the best running back right now in the NFL, and that Falcons team looking like they are starting to find their groove, I think they're able to go to Santa Clara and defeat the 49ers, the final score being 30-27. Now, because Kyle Shanahan is such a great coach, I think he's able to keep the game closer than what you would think with all the injuries they have. But I do believe that the Falcons come out on top 30-27 and start to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their view. I don't think they'll overcome them for the NFC South title or division, but they're definitely going to make it interesting, I believe, especially if they can continue clicking on offense, finding their groove. Their defense is really good, another top 10 defense. So look out for the Falcons. I don't think enough people are talking about them, and I think maybe they will once they see this Sunday night game and see them on prime time and see how talented they really are. But yes, I have the Falcons 30, 49ers 27, and the Falcons, again, showing that they're a team to be reckoned with. And now on Monday night, we actually have two games. There's an 8:15 game. This is probably the game I'm looking most forward to because it's between two really great NFC teams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Detroit Lions. The Buccaneers just came off a win and another performance by Baker Mayfield that has him in the running for MVP. They actually just defeated the 49ers, which I thought would be closer than what it was. But the Buccaneers just seemed to dominate that game. And they're playing a Lions team that is also decimated by injury. Their secondary has been depleted because of the injury bug. You saw that on Sunday night against the Chiefs. The Chiefs were able to take advantage of those, and now they're losing Brian Branch because Brian Branch had that altercation with Juju Smith-Schuster where he decided to foolishly strike him in the helmet. Not the wisest choice. Hoping he'll learn from this, but it really, hopefully, it'll also show him that, hey, you just cost your team. You just made it that much more difficult to defeat a really good Buccaneers team because you're not going to be able to play in it. And we're already depleted in the secondary, and you've just made it even more challenging. I mean, I know Dan Campbell is one of my favorite coaches. He has really turned that team around. I think one of the things I remember hearing about this year that is different from last year is that many of the players that are injured are expecting to come back. Whereas last year, there were several players who got injured that were done for the season. I have no worries about the Lions. I think they'll be right there towards the end of the year. But right now, they are just trying to hang on because their depleted secondary has just been bit by the injury bug. And I think the Buccaneers, because of how well they've been playing, are able to take advantage of that. Baker Mayfield has been playing really well. I know he lost Emeka Egbuka this past week to injury and looks like he'll be out for a couple of weeks. But it looks like Mike Evans is trending to play in this game. And Mike Evans is a great receiver. It was like 9 straight seasons, right, where he has 1,000 yards receiving or more. He's one of a rare club, a fantastic receiver. And if he's able to play, I think it's just going to make it all the more challenging for the Lions to win this game. So I have Tampa Bay winning this game 38-34. I do think it's a shootout. I think Detroit does some things differently this week to help put points on the board, whereas this past week against the Chiefs, they really struggled to do that. They were held to 17 points. But I think they try to get Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery going. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown will, I think also, he was targeted a lot in this past game, with 9 catches, but he only had 45 yards. I think they use him some more. And I think the Lions are able to keep it close, but again, just because of all the injuries that they have, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Baker Mayfield playing so well, they're able to get a win 38-34. And then the last game is a 10 p.m. game, Monday Night Football. Texans versus the Seahawks. The Seahawks are 3.5-point favorites. The Texans just have too many questions, and they are definitely, a couple years ago, C.J. Stroud's rookie year, if you would have gone based off that, you would think that they would have been the team in the AFC South to beat for years to come. And this year, they're just trying to hold their head above water. Right now, it's really a 2-horse race in the AFC South between the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Texans are just trying to catch up right now. They haven't looked quite the same as they did 2 years ago. They seem to digress with each year. But hopefully they can find their groove. I think once things start clicking, they can make things interesting in the AFC South. But because they're not quite there yet, I do have them losing this game to the Seahawks because, A, it's very difficult to go to Seattle and win a game up there in the Pacific Northwest. Next to Arrowhead, Seattle might be the second most difficult place to play. I just think that home field advantage, Seattle being another one of those teams not many people are talking about, but are playing at a very high level. I think that continues. I think the Seahawks beat the Texans 32-24. I'm waiting to see more out of the Texans, but it seems like they've taken steps backwards instead of forwards. We'll see what happens the rest of this season. I do like the Seahawks and what they're doing. That NFC West, I think the teams could remain healthy would be one of the most competitive divisions with the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Niners. Imagine if those teams are healthy all the way. That would be a really competitive division. No offense to the Cardinals, but they're not quite there yet. It's sad to see these injuries really hurting a lot of these teams. But yes, the last game of the week, that Monday night football game at 10 p.m. between the Texans and the Seahawks, I have the Seahawks winning 32-24. I appreciate you stopping by and listening to my picks. I hope that you'll have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for your support. If you could like this video and then subscribe, I would really appreciate that. Until next time, just know that Jesus loves you dearly. If you don't know him, he is waiting to know you. He is just an amazing king, an amazing savior, and he'll be the best thing that ever happens to you. I can guarantee you that. Until next time, my friends, may God bless you, and may you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll talk to you all next time.